Hi, this is Sam Weigel with V1 Rotate, the web series for new and aspiring professional pilots. This week, we're going to talk about what it's like to commute to work by air as an airline, cargo, or fractional pilot. As far back as I can remember, futurists have been predicting that telecommuting would make going to the office a thing of the past. With the COVID-19 pandemic, remote work went downright mainstream. In many industries, there are now people who have built an entire lifestyle out of traveling the world while doing their work remotely. Unless you're a drone operator, working remotely isn't an option for pilots, and any tech that makes it possible will probably put us all out of a job. But for many years now, professional piloting has been one of the few career fields where a large portion of the workforce lives a significant distance from their job and regularly commutes there by air. This wasn't always the case. Before the 1980s, pilots were almost always expected to live within driving distance of their base. After deregulation, however, things got a lot less stable, with airlines regularly opening and closing bases and changing fleet types. Management quickly figured out that they could save a lot of money on training and moving costs if pilots didn't have to move every time the business changed. Over time, employee travel and jump seat policies became much more lenient to allow pilots and flight attendants to commute to work. Today, the number of commuting crew members varies widely by company, base, and fleet. Here in Seattle on the 737, the majority of first officers that I fly with live nearby. In our New York City base, on the other hand, something like 90% of our crew members commute. Pilots commute for a variety of reasons. Most airline bases tend to be in large cities, many with a high cost of living, which might not be acceptable from a lifestyle or budgetary standpoint. Some pilots wish to be near where they grew up, perhaps to be close to family. Others were established in a particular location when they changed jobs. Sometimes airlines close crew bases, as mine did their Dallas base after 9/11, leaving established employees with a choice to quit, move, or commute. Whatever the reason, commuting gives pilots the option to live where they please, albeit at a pretty high cost of time and frustration. Although the airlines do allow their employees to commute to work by air, they are quite insistent on them showing up for work on time. Missing a trip due to a commuting issue is one of the more common ways to land in hot water at the chief pilot's office. Doing so as a new hire pilot on probation might even get you fired. For this reason, most airlines require that you have a primary flight and a backup flight that both arrive to your base before your report time. Now, you're traveling standby as a non-revenue passenger or non-rev, so there have to be seats open on the flight for you to get on. Or, if the flight is full, you can hitch a ride on the flight deck jump seat with the captain's permission, so long as it isn't occupied by the FAA or a check airman. Jump seating is a surprisingly complex subject that probably merits its own video, so look for that episode in the next couple of months. Commuting policies vary. Some airlines require that both primary and backup flights be on your own metal, while others allow one or both to be on any airline. Either way, you'll often find yourself flying to work the day before your trip, especially if you live someplace without a lot of flights to your base, if you have a two-leg commute, if there's potential weather or ATC problems, or if you're just too junior to be able to bid late report times. It's also not unusual to have trips that release after your last flight home, requiring you to spend an extra night in base. Or, if you're really junior, you might be stuck with a reserve line, potentially having to hang around your base for days on end waiting for the company to call. This adds up to a lot of extra time out of your life, as well as the expense of hotel rooms or a crash pad. Crash pads are basically hostels for airline crew and are prevalent at airports with large crew bases. For a fixed monthly cost, you share the facilities with other commuting crew members and sleep in a bunk bed when needed. At a nice crash pad with the right crowd, it can actually be kind of fun, but all too often, crash pads are dirty and depressing. I personally have commuted a few times throughout my career, and I've lived in base for long stretches too. When I was new at Horizon Air, I commuted from LA to Portland for a few months, and from Portland to Minneapolis for my first 6 months at Compass. At my current company, I was hired into the MD-88 in New York City, and I commuted there for 10 months until I could hold my home base of Minneapolis. When we were sailing on Windbird, I commuted to Atlanta from various points throughout the Bahamas and the Caribbean during the cruising seasons, and from various US cities during hurricane season. When I took the upgrade on the 737, I was based in New York City. Dawn and I sailed Windbird back to the US and moved her up and down the East Coast seasonally so that we could live in base during the summer and commute from Orlando during the winter. Having done both, I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't commute. There are plenty of good reasons to do so, and even some fun, frivolous ones like, are you sailing Windbird? I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. But that said, commuting is a huge time suck. I figure that the average commuter spends at least 3 more nights per month away from home. Over the course of a year, that's a month you're losing. If you have kids, that's an entire year of their life that you're missing out on by the time they're 12. Commuting also affects you financially more than you might expect. Yes, the actual flights to your base are free, but you'll spend more on hotels or a crash pad and meals on the road. There's often a fairly big income hit as well. You'll tend to bend minimum credit schedules and fairly inefficient commuter-friendly trips, and I know that personally, when commuting, I did almost no overtime flying. And lastly, commuting is an additional stressor in your life, and it can take a toll on your mental health. In the summer of 2021, we sold Windbird and spent a few months at my in-laws' place in South Dakota. My commute was a 90-mile drive to Fargo, followed by a CRJ flight to Minneapolis, followed by another CRJ flight to New York. Just a few months of that was enough to severely burn me out. In August of that year, we moved to Seattle and I commuted clear across the country to New York for 2 months, which was better but still hard. And then, in October, I was transferred to Seattle. It was eye-opening just how much my life drastically improved despite being more junior in base. I had way more time on my hands, my stress level went down, I was happier, I was more productive in my personal life and side projects, and I started picking up overtime flying when it made sense. In 2022, I made $100,000 more than I did in 2021 without even trying that hard. So, as you start your flying career and consider what moves to make, I would suggest that you set yourself up to live in base as much as possible and minimize commuting. Now, that said, if you're really set on staying where you are and it's a place without airline bases, there are some decent alternatives. Many fractional carriers like NetJets and FlexJet, as well as ACMI carriers like Atlas Air and Kalitta, offer home basing systems where you can live anywhere that has decent airline service, and they'll pay you to book airline travel to and from your rotations. Some larger cargo carriers like FedEx also make commuting easy by offering many rotations that start and end with deadheads and letting you book your own deadhead travel to and from an airport of your choosing. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion of commuting and perhaps gleaned some wisdom for your own future flying career. For more great content for new and aspiring professional pilots, join me here at flymag.com every first and third Friday of the month.